Chapter 228, The Mastermind. Almost instinctively, Klein bent his knees and rolled sideways toward the bathroom door. Sue, a small black feathered arrow stabbed into the wash basin. The arrow seemed to be made of bone and suffused a blue luster. It was extremely beautiful. If Klein had hesitated in any way, he definitely wouldn't have been able to escape this sudden attack. After rolling for a moment, Klein reached into his pocket and attempted to pull out a few tarot cards. But at that moment, he felt a gust of wind engulf him. Through the corner of his eyes, he saw a black figure quickly closing in on him at high speeds. It appeared in front of him in an extraordinary pose as he tightened his foot and kicked out from bottom to top. Realizing that he couldn't avoid the attack, Klein quickly gave up on his previous intentions and used his elbow to block the attack. With a bang, he felt his entire left arm go numb, and his body was yanked over, just like in the sports squash that the middle class loved to play the most, or like a soccer ball that was now popular among the lower class. What immense strength! Klein's heart tightened. Without being flustered, he adjusted his body in midair and changed his posture, barely maintaining his balance as if he was performing acrobatics. Pa! 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 At this moment, a tree bark-colored blowpipe had just landed on the floor of the bathroom and bounced behind the door at a declining speed. Just as Klein was about to stretch out his body to firmly stand and face the follow-up attack, a scene suddenly flashed in his mind. The speed of the enemy in black far exceeded his expectations, arriving even faster than he had expected. He lowered his body and swung his arm, striking him in the chest. In the blink of an eye, Klein's body bent over, spinning half a circle more, like a small ball that kept falling and kept being thrown around. Pow! Hess stretched out his hand and pressed it to the ground, opening his legs like scissors while keeping his head low. It made black-clothed man's fist miss as it tore through empty space. The fist that was originally aimed at his chest could only hit his legs after Klein turned his body, but his legs were open wide. Pushing up, his legs closed in together, allowing Klein to leap nimbly to the side as he finally managed to stand up straight. Pow! Before he had the chance to observe his enemy, the black figure had already arrived in front of him, bringing with it a strong gust of wind. What a fast reaction! Klein quickly lifted his arms up in front of him to block. With a dull thud, he felt as if he had collided with a black bear. Failing to withstand the immense force, he could only stagger backward, his arms almost turning numb in the process. At the same time, Klein finally recognized his attacker. He had dark skin, a lean and hearty build with recessed eye sockets. He was none other than the executioner of this Manger gang, Merceau, the person who had come to see Detective Moriarty in the morning. Pa! 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 With a fierce glint in his eyes, Merceau closely pursued after him as he flung both of his arms, delivering left hooks or right punches in a barrage of attacks at Klein. The gap between Klein's strength and that of his opponent was obvious. He was unable to face him head-on, and he had to rely on his agility and premonitory senses to barely avoid the combo of punches. No, I have to make full use of my advantages. With a similar thought, Klein stopped engaging in melee combat. He lowered his body and rolled to the side. Crack! A chair was torn apart by Merceau's kick. Klein supported his body with one hand as he exerted strength in his waist, and continued rolling in a bid to seek a chance to use his tarot cards and self-made charms. Tap! 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 Merceau caught up quickly and kicked out his legs, one after another. That was in no way slower than his opponent. He was like a giant bear with the gift of agility and had zero weaknesses. He made it so that the rolling Klein was only capable of focusing on dodging and defending, without giving him the chance to draw his cards or use his charms. Catcha! Bammer bam! A chair was broken, the table overturned, the coat rack toppled, and Klein had circled most of the way around, but his situation was turning dire. "I can't go on like this," he kept dodging, rolling and tumbling, seeking every opportunity to turn the situation around. Suddenly, an idea came to him when he spotted the coffee table in the living room through the corner of his eyes. Bam! Klein defended a blow with one arm as jumped back towards the living room while enduring the pain. At this moment, Merso's leg muscles bulged suddenly like they were inflated with air. Boom! He stepped on the ground so hard that it seemed to shake, and he jumped up and shot at Klein like a bullet, with one of his legs aimed at him. Klein barely managed to hold on for a moment before being sent flying again, crashing through the coffee table with a clang, sending the ceramic tea set flying towards the cupboard, scattering the round fountain pens, the contract template, and the various newspapers on the floor. Seeing that the detective in the black double-breasted coat was weakened from the impact and momentarily unable to stand up or roll, a fierce glint flashed in Merso's eyes. He slid forward, pushing his knee out amidst the shattering sounds of the porcelain. Klein's eyes turned dark as he watched this scene. He was already holding a contract template in his hands. He had fled to the coffee table in the living room, ignoring the warnings his premonition was giving him solely to pick up a contract template or newspaper. When he saw Merso's knee coming at him, Klein's wrist shook. At that moment, a scene appeared in his mind once again, a scene with Merso's neck twisted backward. Sue, Klein slightly pressed his wrist, shaking out the contract template in his hand. Sue, that contract was like a dart made of fine steel as it shot at Merso's throat. At that moment, the distance between the two of them was less than a meter. Moreover, as Merso closed in, the distance between them was decreasing. A white item was reflected in Merso's eyes as he instinctively tried to jump back to dodge it. Oof! That contract stabbed right through Merso's throat, penetrating his windpipe. Blood with patches of bubbling blood gushed out as Merso fell in front of Klein, his knees heavily hitting the ground. Huff, 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 he pulled out the bloodied contract template and clutched his throat. However, he was unable to stop the blood from flowing out of his wound, and his eyes gradually became unfocused. In the end, his body twitched a few times, and he stopped moving. Klein took a moment to recover before he had the strength to turn around and stand up. He had a few tarot cards between his fingers, on guard against possible counterattacks and other enemies. After activating his spirit vision and confirming that his assailant was dead, Klein looked around and didn't see any other auras. Only then did he relax a little. He noticed that two of the chairs were broken. The coffee table was smashed up in several spots, and porcelain was strewn all over the floor. The entire living room, dining room, and foyer were in a mess. Lowering his head, he saw that the sleeves of his suit had been damaged and that the outer layer of the cloth had been stained with a great deal of dust. Suddenly, Klein said softly in a self-deprecating manner, "There's no way to claim reimbursement for this." Ha ha, ha ha ha, ha ha ha. He laughed as if he had encountered something that could amuse him for the rest of his life. He laughed so hard that his body bent forward and backward, to the point where only his laughter reverberated in the entire house. A few seconds later, Klein stopped smiling and walked to the corpse with a heavy expression. He wanted to make the dead speak, being familiar with the mediumship ritual and answering his own prayers. Klein took a whiff of the refreshing fragrance and used the technique of dream divination to whisper the mastermind who sent Merso on this mission. Soon, his eyes turned black as he entered a dream and saw a gray blur. Suddenly, the gray and blurry world and lit figures changed, forming numerous scenes and images before him. In front of Merso was a middle-aged man without a hat. His white shirt had a complicated, layered, petal-shaped collar and cuffs, which made him look very magnificent. Matched with a tight black vest and skinny trousers, he looked gaudy and exaggerated. This middle-aged man had brown hair and blue eyes, a thin face with a stubble. He was a very good-looking gentleman. He looked at Merceau and said in a deep voice, "No matter what you do, make sure you find Ian Wright alive. If he's dead, bring him to me within an hour, preferably within 15 minutes. Yes, Mr. Ambassador." Merceau didn't hide his unruliness, but still kept his head lowered. The scene shattered, and Klein frowned. Ambassador, this matter actually involves other countries? Judging by the style of the shirt, the ambassador is most likely the ambassador of the Intis Republic to Backland. Ian is only a teenage boy. That gentleman is able to channel spirits, or at least he has someone around him who can do so. Klein thought for a moment, then constructed another sentence for the dream divination. The reason for finding Ian Wright? In the grayish blurry dream, Klein once again saw the middle-aged gentleman from before. He stared at Merceau and said in a low voice, "You don't need to know why. Just heed my instructions. I gave you the potion and money to become the person in power behind this manger gang. Not for you to raise questions, but for you to do things. Yes, you only need to know that Ian Wright might be involved in an item of great importance." As the scene faded away, Klein once again exited the dream. An item of great importance? I really can't tell. Ian, what could it be? Potion? So Merceau is actually a Beyonder. It's no wonder that his combat skills were so powerful and terrifying. He should be a Beyonder, adept in this field. As these thoughts crossed his mind, Klein felt exhausted. It seemed that responding to his own request had consumed too much of his spirituality. If he wanted to have his mediumship standards restored to what it was previously, he estimated that it would only happen when he was a sequence 7. After ending the ritual and dispelling the wall of spirituality, Klein looked at Merceau's corpse and carefully observed it for a long time. Finally, he saw specks of spiritual radiance converging at the wound on his opponent's throat, slowly congealing into a piece. Carefully grabbing it, Klein pulled out a dark red object that looked like jelly from Earth. Is this the Beyonder characteristic left behind by Merceau? I wonder what kind of sequence potion it is that's easy to determine. They'll get the answer by doing a divination above the gray fog, theoretically speaking. The Beyonder characteristic of low sequence Beyonders will be able to imbue a person with the corresponding powers even without the supplementary ingredients. However, one can easily lose control and go insane on the spot after consuming it nearly all the supplementary ingredients. For low sequence potions lack spirituality, Klein's thoughts ran wild before he finally forced himself to focus. A corpse was now in front of him. It gave him a headache thinking about what he should do next.